question is not, will we face mountains in our lives? The question is, how will we face them?
Man, it was great being able to be away last weekend and be able to kind of take a bird's eye view of life back here. You know, because when you get away for a minute and you can kind of reflect and think and pray through what's going on in my own life and what's going on in ministry and all that stuff being back here, it's great because you get a chance to kind of remember too, kind of think through some of those things, and been working through some of my own brokenness, my own stuff in my own life, and just kind of walking through some of that stuff. And one of the things that just kind of came to mind to me this last week is having kids. You know, having kids is been a blast for us. We have 3 girls there. They are, I'm just going to guess this one again, like 13, 15, and 17. I think they're all in the odd numbers right now. But then in a minute, they'll change ages again, because just as soon as I get them memorized, they switch. And that's just how it goes. But so it's just, you know, the whole commonality of it. Now, if you've got kids, you've seen this, you know this stuff, because it is pretty common to every single household. If you've got nieces or nephews, you've seen this, because being around kids, there are a handful of things that are just common to every single kid on the planet, okay? And if you are a junior high or high school kid and you think you're past this stuff, there's still just a little bit of each one of these things in you, because I see it in every kid I've ever dealt with, okay? The first one is that the word no affects children at a molecular level. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, okay? But when you say no to your kids, they don't just, it's not like other words. You could say all the other words, it might elicit a little response here or there, just kind of a thing. But the minute you say no to a kid, every molecule in them compresses. Have you ever noticed? I mean, this is biologically accurate, and I know that I can prove this, because go ahead and tell your 5 or 6 or 7-year-old no to something, and what happens? They just collapse. Like every molecule rushes to their feet, and their body loses all kinds of, every ability to stand up. No, are you kidding me? Seriously, Mom? And then it just takes a little while for all the molecules to go back, and they can stand up normal again. But at first, it just takes a little while before they get to that. So that's a common thing. Another thing is that when you say no to something, once their body recovers, not all of you kids are not thinking this is accurate, but look at your parents right now. They know. Once their body gets all the molecules back into the regular places, and you get your wits about you, you know, there's this part of you that wants to know one question. But why? You know, why can't I do this, right? And which elicits a response in us as parents that we never thought we would tell, right? In our whole lives, every single parent in this room at some point in their life made a vow to God himself and said, when I have kids, I will never say to my children, what? Because I said so. And what do we say? After the molecules get back in place and they go, but why? And then we go, because I said so. And then at that moment, you come to this crisis of belief where you realize that you are in some ways your parents, right? And you're like, oh, everything about you feels like I gotta go take a shower. You know, like, this is terrible. What have I done to my child? They're going to be broken and jacked up. And one day they're going to be in a counselor, and they're like, I sprained my ankle, and my mom said no to me. And then she said, because I said so, and it freaked me out. Okay. Then you say, this is just the way it is, right? And then they go, what's the other thing? They go, well, that's not fair. Everybody knows this stuff, right? We go through this stuff. Like the minute you say no, they break their legs, they fall down, they say, but why? You say, because I said so. And they say, but that's not fair. And then what do we say? Life's not fair. Get used to it. This is how we do things, right? And you don't have to have kids to know this stuff because your parents told you it wasn't fair, right? We know it wasn't fair, and in some ways, this is a little bit of revenge on our kids, right? We're like, listen, I had to put up with this crap when I was a kid. You got to put up with it too. Life's not fair, right? You're just paying for it, right? This is the way it goes. But there's this problem, isn't it? That I tell my kids to get over it. Life's not fair. You better just get used to it. Life's not fair. This is how the rest of the world lives. Life's not fair. And while I tell them that life's not fair and they should get used to it, to be totally honest with you, I'm not used to it yet. I mean, I'm 44 years old and I'm still not used to the fact that life's not fair. I'm still not used to the fact that good things happen to bad people, you know? That bad people are just going on about life like there's no big deal and everything's figuring it out, and they live their life in a lot of ways from where I sit, right? A completely godless existence, doing whatever they want, whatever feels good, and it just seems like everything seems to be working out, and it's not fair, and I don't like it, right? I mean, their kids turn out normal, and I watch good, God-fearing people and their kids just do what they want to do, and it just kind of this rebellion sinks in, and it just, I don't know, it doesn't seem fair, and as much as I tell my kids to get used to it, I'm probably talking more to me. Life's not fair, and I'm not used to it. There are other things. I just hate that idea. Like, I hate that politicians can, like, figure out ways to finagle themselves more money, and then they pass the bill to me. When April 15th rolls around, there's no part of me goes, well, I'm totally used to it being unfair. I love this. Take as much as you want, right? I mean, in my entire life, I've been a taxpayer. You know, I'm a law-abiding taxpayer. I have never signed a check and just sent it to them and said, you know, just fill in the blanks, whatever you want to do. Because life's not fair. I'm really totally used to it, you know? Like, nobody does that because life is unfair, and I'm not used to it. Childhood cancer. I've been a pastor now a long time. They should not make child-sized caskets. It just doesn't seem fair, right? Like, I should never see a mom on the front row and a child up here. I don't get it. It just isn't fair, and I got to be honest with you, I'm not used to it. I still am not used to it. Stand in the lines with all of you, right? We've all been there. We've stood in the line at a funeral. We walk up. We don't know what to say. It's not fair. Like, I look at it and go, I don't know. The only thing I can figure out to say is, this sucks. I hate this. I can't stand that you have to go through this. And I'm so sorry. There are no good words. Life is not fair, and I'm not used to it. As much as I tell my kids to get used to it, I'm not used to it. And we have to deal with this huge question that every one of us have if we're honest, okay? Like, if we're really, and I know church is not normally the place where you're honest. This is the place where you watch your language, okay? This is not the place where you're normally honest, because I know that, because most of the time when people get upset about something, they're like, oh, I'm sorry, did I just say that out loud? You know, like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm in church, I shouldn't cuss, right? Like, we always feel like we shouldn't cuss here, but it's okay to lie about our life, right? That's church for you. But here's the thing. Maybe we could switch that. Maybe it's okay to lie. Maybe it's okay to cuss here, but it's not okay to lie about your life. Every single one of us have this tension that exists in our life, this question: how do we overcome the harsh reality that exists in the phrase that's life's not fair? How do we overcome the harsh reality that there is disappointment in our life, in our marriages, in our parenting, in our business, in our work? How do we overcome? How do we get past the reality? It is a harsh reality, right? And most of us are like, no, everything's fine. And we're fighting back tears, right? We know that everything about us just wants to cry out in desperation. But there's this part of us that we're like, no, it's okay. Everything's great. How are you doing? Man, I'm doing good. I always want to say, are you telling me or you? Because I'm not positive you're really doing that well. Because it's a harsh reality. Life's not fair. And I don't like it, and I'm not used to it. And the question that we have to deal with is, how do we bridge the gap between our expectations and the reality of this world that's not fair around us? It's not enough just to say it's not fair, get used to it. We've got to find some sort of peace. And I got to be honest with you, it begins with honesty. It begins with us admitting that life's not fair and I don't like it. It becomes with us saying, look, this sucks and I don't like it. I hate this part of it and I want to find a way to overcome it. Jesus felt this way. I love this. This is such a great thing that when Jesus invites us into a relationship, he's not inviting us into some obscure religious observation of the truth that he came, right? And that's kind of the way we approach church is like, Jesus came, that's information that I accept, and I come to church, and I walk in, I sit down, I do some spiritual calisthenics, right? Stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down. We pray a couple times, I listen to some stuff, I religiously align my head with the fact that Jesus came some 2,000 years ago, and then I go on about my regular life. When Jesus invites us into, like even into this place, he invites us into the reality of a relationship that he sympathizes with the fact that life's not fair and it doesn't work out. He was treated more unfairly than we've ever been treated. In our life, we've never experienced nearly the unfairness or the dissatisfaction with the way things were going to turn out as Jesus did. In fact, after living 33-ish years on this earth, a perfect life, the night before he was going to be betrayed, right? And the night of his betrayal, the whole thing kind of leads up, and he winds up in this garden they call Gethsemane. Look at Matthew chapter 26. It says this in verse 36, that Jesus went with them to the olive grove called Gethsemane. Okay, now look, it's just a garden, it's a place, and he's like just a place in town where they went. And he said he went there, and he said, sit here a little while, and I'll go over there to pray. Now, you got to understand something about the first few books of the New Testament. They're called the Synoptic Gospels. I don't mean to say that to like make it sound super official, but what it means is that they are seen from different perspectives. S-Y-N, meaning like seen, optic, different perspectives. So different, seen from different points of view. So they're Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. If you just read them, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew, Mark, and Luke are just really similar. There's like 90-something% similar. So they're the ones that like you see like very different things. So they saw the same things from very different perspectives, right? So for instance, like if I'm just going to use this as an example, and we won't spend a lot of time on this, and I asked these people over here, what am I holding up? You'd say, you're holding up an iPad. And if I were to ask them over here, what am I holding up? They would say, holding up an iPad and an iPhone. You see what's going on? Like they see things differently. So the book of Luke tells us the exact same story, but he just tells it from a little different point of view. And it's so important we get what he says. He says he walked away about a stone's throw, and he knelt down and he prayed, Father, Luke must have been a little closer. If you're willing, let this cup of suffering pass away. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine. See, like Luke just caught a little bit of a whisper of Jesus' transparency and his honesty with God. I want us to understand something. God's okay with your questions. He's a big boy. He can take it. It's okay when we tell God it sucks. Some of you are like, I can't say sucks to God. Oh yeah, you can. This sucks. And sometimes that's the only way to describe it. And sometimes that's the clean version, right? So like we have to be able to be honest with God. Get this, Jesus was completely honest with the Father, and he knew the whole plan. He knew everything. He knew why he was going to be betrayed. He knew why he was going to be crucified. He knew exactly how painful it would be, and he knew the big picture, and he still had questions and doubts. I don't know about you, but when life's not fair, when I get dealt a hand and life just doesn't seem like there's something that like makes sense in it, I don't know the whole picture. I don't know what tomorrow's like. I don't know if this is ever going to work out well. I don't know if this is the way things are going to wind up being. I don't know if this is the new normal. I don't know if this sickness is going to end in health or in more disease. So if God's okay with Jesus' questions in the garden, and he knows the whole plan, how come we think he's not okay with our questions? God is okay with your doubts and questions. It's okay for you to not feel okay about things that are not okay, right? This is the way it is. And the other problem is that we feel like we can't be that honest at church, and that sucks too. That we feel like we can't walk through the door and people go, hey, how are things going with this in your life? And that you can't be honest and go, man, I'm just so disappointed in it. And that you can't be honest and go, man, I'm just so disappointed in it. And that you can't be honest and go, man, I'm just so disappointed in it. And that you can't be honest and go, man, I'm just so disappointed in it. And that you can't be honest and go, man, I'm just so disappointed in it. And that you can't be honest and go, man, I'm just so disappointed in it. And that you can't be honest and go, man, I'm just so disappointed in it. And that you can't be honest and go, man, I'm just so disappointed in it. And that you can't be honest and go, man, I'm just so disappointed in it. And that you can't be honest and go, man, I'm just so disappointed in it. And that you can't be honest and go, man, I'm just so disappointed in it. And that you can't be honest and go, man, I'm just so disappointed in it. And that you can't be honest and go, man, I'm just so disappointed in it. And that you can't be honest and go, man, I'm just so disappointed in it. And that you can't be honest and go, man, I'm just so disappointed in it. And that you can't be honest and go, man, I'm we should be a place that helps people see the hope and the peace that's available to them, not a place where we all come and pretend that everything out there is okay and we're just oblivious to it, right? Yay, it's all great. Let's sing another hymn. It'll be great, right? Like sometimes life doesn't work like that. Jesus expresses his concern to God, and God comforts him in this. And this isn't the last time he expresses it. It's not like he just say, hey, I got to jump through this hoop. I just feel like I got to get this off my chest. Problem, this is the way it goes. He expresses it, but here's the tension, right? If the question is that we have to figure out how to bridge the gap between our reality and our disappointment, right? The tension is that God is more okay with our questions than we are with his answers. God is far more okay with us pushing on him than we are with him giving us an answer. And I want you to know something about this whole thing. Everything, and really if you want to just summarize my preaching, if you want to summarize really the Gospels, if you want to really summarize most of God's word, isn't it really just an invitation into a deeper level of trust with God? Isn't that really what this is all about? At the end of the day, I mean, we can sparse all the theological words, we can argue all this stuff, but isn't it all really just an invitation for you to come into a greater dependency on him and less of a dependency on yourself? Some of you are like, yes, I can skip church forever. This rocks. I can just summarize it all. And it's true. In a way, it's true. It really is just an invitation to a deeper dependency on him. What happens for us, though, is when God gives us a no answer, or he gives us no answer. Like when God gives us a no answer, or God gives us no answer, we're afraid, and we kind of get to this place where we're like, well, God's either not here or he doesn't care. God's either not there or he doesn't care. When I get a no answer or I get no answer, my initial reaction is either God's not there or he doesn't care, and neither of those are true. He's inviting us into a deeper and more dependent relationship with him in a world that he knows is not fair. See, overcoming our fear or getting past our fear isn't about us developing some like supernatural confidence where we just don't care how all of life goes, right? Where we all of a sudden don't care about our kids. Give me a break. Where we all of a sudden don't care. Oh, who cares? For me, to live is die, is Christ, and to die is gain. Well, yeah, but dying still kind of sucks, right? I mean, there's still parts of it. It's not an invitation into a place where we just don't care about the things that we care about anymore, or we all of a sudden just care more about what's next than we do right now. It's really not about us overcoming or getting our answers straightened out. And that's the reason why it sucks so bad to go to funerals. You walk up the aisle and you wait and you talk to them and you say, yeah, here's my great promise for you. All things work together for good for those who love Jesus, right? To which they go, huh? Do you see what I'm doing? This does not work out good, right? How is this good? Oh, yes, I know. And don't get me wrong. I'm not demeaning the value of us one day being resurrected and made whole. But that's not what this is talking about. What is the truth of it is that overcoming isn't about us getting our answers. It's not us about having a pat answer for every little thing. It's about getting God's peace. Peace that literally passes understanding, like Philippians 4 says. That when we make our requests known to God, he gives us a peace that passes understanding. A peace that when people look at us, they go, that doesn't even make sense. How can this make sense? That person has peace in that situation, in the middle of that divorce, in the middle of that despair, in the middle of that disease, in the middle of all that they're going through, they still have this peace. They're not polished and happy all the time, but they have a peace that's within them, that God has this firmly in his hand, and that if it's not good, then God's not done. And that's a peace that makes sense, right? So this is an important thing for us to understand. It's not about getting our answers. It's about getting God's peace. So really, if we're going to overcome the disappointment that we experience in life, the disappointment in our marriage, the disappointment in our parenting, the disappointment in our careers, if we're going to overcome the disappointment that things didn't work out the way we wanted, or things in our health are just not working out, then it's not about us getting the right answers and going, oh, I understand the plan perfectly now. I just wish I would have known that. It's about us getting peace, and peace comes from a deeper and more personal dependence on Jesus. Jesus kept going back into the deal. I mean, back into Matthew. This is a pretty powerful little story that goes on, starts in verse 40. It says, then he returned to the disciples and found them asleep. He said to Peter, did I get this right? Yeah, okay, cool. He said to Peter, couldn't you watch with me even an hour? Keep watch and pray so that you will not give into temptation, for the spirit is willing, but the body or the flesh is weak, right? We've all heard that phrase before. So Jesus comes back out, finds them, and then goes, okay, look, just try and stay awake, okay, bud? It's going to be all right. And then he goes back in. He's not yelling at him. He's not mean at him. He goes back into and he goes to pray, and then he left them a second time and prayed, my Father, if this cup cannot be taken away unless I drink it, your will be done. And when he turned to them again, he found them sleeping, for they couldn't keep their eyes open. You ever been like that? Don't lie to me, because I've seen you while I preach, right? And you're trying. You're doing everything you can. You're like, right? Like, and I've got to be honest with you, the reason I like preaching, this is the main reason I like preaching, and my wife will tell you this is absolutely the truth. Because if I sit there, I don't care how good this guy is up here, I'm asleep. She's like, Jeremy, you cannot sleep during the sermon. You are one of the pastors here, right? They can't look over, and I'm going, and I get it, right? There's just times in life where you can't keep your mind. I'm going to look straight up in the sky. 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, there's one dude in church here like this. He's like this. Lean, head back, neck hurting. I mean, he could not have been comfortable. And as uncomfortable as it is for me as a speaker to see somebody who's just like dead cold asleep, his neck hurt, I promise you, for 2 weeks, okay? Because there's no way you could sleep like that and be comfortable. But there's just times where he couldn't do that, right? So Jesus comes back out to him, and they're like, oh, they couldn't keep their eyes open. And I love his response to him. He just says, hey, guys, would you just do this? So he went to pray a third time, and he goes back out again, saying the same things again. And he came to the disciples, and he said, go ahead and sleep. Have your rest. But look, the time has come. The Son of Man is to be betrayed in the hands of sinners. Up, let's get going. Look, my betrayer is here. I mean, he gets to this place in this story, right, where he's like compassionate toward them. He gets it, right? They're up all night, and it's a big, insurmountable deal to him. But it's not. I mean, it's a big deal to the guys, but they're still exhausted. Because they're not facing nails in their hands and feet. They're not facing the judgment of the Roman armies. They're not facing death on a cross. In fact, they barely even really know, because every time they ask him a question, Jesus tells one of those really confusing stories, and they're like, oh, yeah, I get it. Yeah, that makes sense, So they don't know exactly what's going on, and he knows exactly what this holds. But here's the thing that we have to understand is so often we look to others for hope, when God really places others there just for help. Jesus looks to them for help, but he's not putting our hope in them. So often when I talk with people, so often when I talk with many of you in the funeral line or going through this thing or struggling through life, the problem is your disappointment in others. When you went through the divorce, when you went through that issue, when you went through all the pain and the struggle, and you're looking for others, and people frustrate you with their answers, people frustrate you with the fact that they don't call you enough or they don't care. But here's the problem. We can't look to others for hope. We can only look to others for help. And really peace, and we get peace by recognizing and accepting the limitations of the people around us. They don't feel our pain. They don't feel everything we feel. They don't understand everything we understand. They aren't going through everything we're going through. Now, they can help, right? But they can't be our hope. They can be our help, but they can't be our hope. It's got to be something where we say, listen, I want to look for the people that God has placed in my life, so that I can experience the help he wants me to experience. But the problem is, I can't look to them for hope. So often in our lives, we struggle through the idea of finding hope in other people because that's what we're looking for out of them. It happens every day in my life where I have this question, and I think it's core to the need of every single man. Do I have what it takes? I think it's part of every single man's life. Do I have what it takes to be the provider? Do I have what it takes to bring strength into my marriage? Do I have what it takes to be a great dad? Do I have what it takes? That big question resides in me, right? Every single one of us carry that question in us. And the problem is when I look around me and I take that question to my wife and I go, do I have what it takes, babe? Will you tell me I have what it takes? And I put my hope in her. She can't answer that question. When I recognize the limitations of my wife, then I bring that question to God and say, God, do you believe I have what it takes? When I look at our staff, right, and I look at our guys, and I love working with our staff team. They're profound people. We don't hire people that don't get it, who don't walk with Jesus. We get it, and I love them. But when I take my do I have what it takes question to them, and I'm like, guys, do I have what it takes? And I lay it out there, they are holding a weight that they can't bear. When I recognize their limitations and I begin to ask that question to God again, it puts me in my right place. It puts them in their right place. When we recognize the limitations of others, it keeps us from letting the people around us slide into the places that only God should occupy. I want to say that again because it's very important. When we begin to ask questions, our validity questions, when we begin to ask our biggest hope-filled questions to the people around us, we start letting them slide into the places and spaces that God is only allowed to occupy. But when we recognize the limitations of others, when we recognize that they're feeble and broken, we recognize that they were never meant to bear the full weight of our question. When we recognize the limitations of others, it keeps us from letting them slide into the places and spaces in our life where only God was intended to occupy. So here's the thing. We're stuck in this, right? We're stuck in this world that doesn't make sense, invited into a relationship where God wants to speak directly to us, where God wants us to lean in on him, where God wants to heal our brokenness, set us free from the captivity of feeling like we've got to perform, right? And all this stuff, but we want so badly to know the plan, right? I was just at this retreat last week, and John Eldridge said this, right? We've all begged, God, just show me the plan. You know why God doesn't give you the plan? Because you do it without him, right? You just tell him the plan, you go, thanks, see you later, and just go accomplish it, right? He's inviting us into a relationship with him where we're in complete dependence. So how is it that we overcome the harsh reality that life's not fair? We accept his peace instead of trying to get the answers. We're invited into a dependency on him. And ultimately, we just have to understand that the plan never makes sense in the midst of pain. Peace comes when we recognize that the plan never makes sense in the midst of the pain. So if you're still experiencing pain, the plan isn't going to make sense. The planner is who makes sense. So Jesus is inviting us into a relationship with him. The plan never makes sense in the midst of pain. In fact, let me just share this bottom line with you. I know where you're at. We're all in some state of confusion. And maybe you're thinking, man, I'm just not there yet. I'm not in a sense of confusion. There's no tension in my life. Right now, everything's good. Tomorrow's coming, right? I mean, Monday happens, right? We're going to get back into life. And at some point, you're either coming out of, you're in, or you're going into a season of your life where there is confusion and pain and tension and problems. There will be a story on the horizon. I'm not trying to be despairing, but there will be a place in life where you're like, this is not fair. When that day comes, understand this bottom line. The journey from confusion to clarity is paved with trust. The journey from confusion, life's not fair, to clarity, where I have peace that passes understanding is paved in trust. You want something to do with that? Well, I mean, what, you want something to walk out of here with? Walk out of here and take your next step toward a deeper relationship with Jesus. If you're here and you're going, man, I don't have a relationship with Jesus, we want to talk with you. When we finish this song in a little while, we're going to dismiss you. We're going to share a few announcements. And when we're done with all that, Bryce is going to be up here on the side over here, the table. He's just going to hang out, and he would love an opportunity to talk with you about how to begin a relationship with Jesus. This isn't about raising a hand or walking an aisle or doing some sort of religious thing. You want peace and confusion. You don't get it by getting answers. You get it by getting peace, and peace begins with a relationship with Jesus. If you're here today and, man, that's not your story yet, you're just going, man, I'm not sure about it, I just want to invite you to consider it. If you're already a follower of Jesus and you're in the middle of all the confusion, I just want you to be confident of one thing. Philippians 1:6 says that God doesn't have ADD. That's the Jeremy unauthorized version. He says that he finishes everything he starts. He who has begun a good work in you will continue it and finish it till the day of Jesus Christ. He's done it before, and he'll do it again. He's done it before, and he'll do it again. In the midst of your confusion today, he's done it before, and he'll do it again. There's a tension, isn't it? We're walking around these walls, and we feel like, man, I thought by now they'd fall. Man, but your love never fails. I'm going to invite you to stand up, and we're going to sing that song, kind of in response, that we're in response to our own reluctancy to believe that he will do it again, a proclamation that he will do it again. Let's stand again.